St. Paul's Universalist Church. Nice old Celtic melody. Good way to start the service. I have several announcements. Today is the day of the annual meeting. I suspect that's why there are less people here today. Yeah, that's usually why there's less people. But we didn't have one last year because of, you may have heard, there's a pandemic. But anyway, the Board of Trustees will be meeting, I believe, downstairs, Mr. President? Yes. Anyone who would like to is certainly welcome to attend. You are not required to, unless you're a member of the board. But it's where we, if it were not a COVID-y situation, we would either meet down there around coffee or go down and get our coffee, then come back up here and have our yearly meeting. But that will be taking place immediately following the service. We've got one more week to go in our church calendar. Next Sunday will be the last service of the church year here at St. Paul's. And this is just a friendly reminder that, the CDC has gotten to the point where they've started to loosen mask restrictions if you've had both your immunizations. But out of an abundance of caution, one more week, we're just going to continue our COVID protocols. What we come back to in the fall may be different. We will discuss that as time progresses, but let's just stay safe. And if you have not already done so, there are a few collection boxes in the back, envelopes. And if you would like to pledge and have been kind of on the fence or just haven't gotten around to it, there are some available in the back, and if you could get those to Julie by, it says here June, to Julie, not June, sorry. J-U-L, right? Yes, get to Julie, our church collector, that would be great. Along the lines of skipping back, church services here will end. They will be going forward in our sister congregation at Salisbury, up above Dolgeville. If anyone would like, services I believe are up there half an hour earlier. They're at 9:30. And a number of guest speakers. I know I'm doing 3. I think Justin is doing 3. Linda Van Slyke is doing 2 or 3. But it's kind of an agreement we have with them. They do June, July, August. We will resume services here the Sunday after Labor Day. That's all I have. Let us proceed to our musical call to worship. Think about this in the context of the pandemic. Of course, it's something that would apply both before, during, and after. Not everything that weighs you down is yours to carry. We're starting to come out the other side of the pandemic, and it occurred to me that it's been a rough ride. Certainly one that none of us expected. It was a hard right or left or complete turnaround when it happened. And it stirred up all sorts of negative emotions, both on a personal level and a societal level. How do we respond to that as we're emerging from this time? How do we cope with those feelings? That will be the topic of today's sermon. And so I welcome you to our Sunday service, our opportunity to come together on our shared spiritual journeys. We come from different places and we look at life from many different perspectives. Yet we know that here in this place, that all seekers are welcome. As is our custom, we will open with the lighting of the chalice. As I light the chalice, I invite you to join me in the words. We light the chalice for all who are here and all who are not, for all who have ever walked through our doors, for those who may yet find this spiritual home, and for those who can't even yet imagine. For each of us and for us all, may this flame burn warm and bright. And please join us in our opening hymn, Be Thou My Vision. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with our God. It occurred to me that we have an opportunity to do something that we haven't done in a handful of years, since a lot of the young people, as is the case, you feed them and water them and they grow and they become adults and then they move on. And these young folks have sat patiently through services for a number of weeks now. So I would like to invite them to come up for a children's moment, if they are so inclined. And you can bring Mom, because Mom is somebody's kid too. Oh, there he is. I thought you'd put your brother in a basket or something. Yeah, have a seat. Yeah, you can sit right in the pew. Awesome. Good morning. I love kids' masks. I've been told you can get adult masks. Oh, there's Miles Morales Spider-Man. Oh, there's the Hulk. He was one of my favorites. We're going to talk about negative feelings today, and one of them is anger, so that's a good one to wear. Let's see those flowers. Disney princesses. Holy cow, I need new glasses. Make a note of that. I need new glasses. Okay. So I have a question for you today. Do you ever get mad or upset? Okay. Do your eyes turn green? Do you get big and muscly? No, okay. That's a little too far, right? I'm going with that Hulk image on your mask. And we all do get mad and upset, right? See, I was all set for you to say, no, I never get mad or upset. Run that by me again? Oh, you got really mad. You know what? I know. You know what? I totally get that, because at one point I was your ages, and I had a brother and a sister too. And let's see, you're the oldest, right? Do you ever get told, you're the oldest, you need to set the example? Anything like that? Like you need to show these younger ones, you should know better. You've already done this, stuff like that. That's what I heard a lot when I was the oldest. Yeah, you try, right? You do what you can. Anyway, we all get mad. We get scared, right? You're only 5 turning 6? You're literally turning 8 in a month? Wow. In a month and a couple days. All right, we've had some. Oh, wow, that's perfect. It's perfect when you have the birthday right as summer vacation starts, right? I always feel bad for the kids that have their birthdays like the beginning of September. It's like, happy birthday, go back to school, right? And we have a lot of good feelings. Or no school. That's true, this year it was kind of strange that way, wasn't it? So anyway, we have negative feelings, and we also have good feelings too, right? Now, something that you will be able to tell your children about someday, if you decide to have them, is you'll be able to remember the pandemic, right? Living through this pandemic. Remember that last spring you were in school and all of a sudden they said, hey, go home and you can't come back. And you're going to be learning on a computer. Oh, you were homeschooled, so perfect. So mom didn't have to worry about, hopping on a computer or anything. Awesome. You were ahead of the game.
I have the wolf game, and I have level 18, and I have ice track.
You're on level 18 of the what game?
The wolf.
The wolf? The wolf game? Are you serious? A wolf game?
Never fight poison.
Wow. You are like a prophet today. Holy cow. Wait till you see where we're going.
Poison wolf is the last wolf, and it's
Poison wolf is the last wolf. Well, I can't believe this, but guess what? I'm here to tell you a little story about wolves. And poison wolves. Wow. Did you get a hold of my notes? No. You may or may not have heard this story before, but I have a story that I would like to share with you about how we deal with our good and bad feelings. And look, there's 2 wolves. And this is a story from one of the... There's a dark wolf and a white wolf. This is a story from the Cherokee people. They're one of the Native American tribes here in America. All right? And a grandfather, according to the story, was talking with his grandson. Okay, older people tend to have more wisdom because they've lived longer, they have more experience. So the grandfather was talking to his grandson, and he said, there is a fight going on inside of me. All right? There's a fight going on inside of me. And it is a terrible fight, and it's between 2 wolves. Right? One is a bad wolf. He is filled with anger, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance. That's where he thinks he's all that. Self-pity, guilt, resentment, feeling bad about himself. He lies. Okay? He thinks he's better than everyone else. And the grandfather continued, the other wolf is a good wolf. He is filled with joy, peace, love, hope. He's calm. He's humble. He doesn't go bragging about how good he is. He's kind. He tries to understand other people's feelings. He's generous. He tells the truth. And he's filled with compassion for others. And those two wolves are fighting within me, said the grandfather. And guess what? The same fight is going on in all of you, in all of us. The grandson thought about this for a minute, the two wolves. The wolf with all the bad qualities and the wolf with all the good qualities. Right? And he said to his grandfather, he asked him, which one will win the fight? And his grandfather said, the one you feed. What do you think that might be about? The one you follow will win the fight. Yes. Yes.
Both of them.
Both of them, or as you would.
None of them will win the fight.
Well, it depends on the day. Some days, doesn't it?
Because
We both have those feelings. Wow. This homeschooling thing is working out well. They knew the topic. Yes. So our good feelings are like the one wolf. And our bad feelings are like the other wolf. And do we really have wolves fighting inside us? No. Like if someone were to cut into us, there would be two wolves going, right? But they're symbolic. And they're fighting inside us. And the one who wins is the one that we feed, the one that we try to be like. Right? We have a choice in how we treat others and how we treat our feelings. The what? Oh. You try to be like both of them.
Feed both of them so they can both accomplish the task that you need to do. They can fight together to be good.
Yeah, it can be tricky. Sometimes we need our negative emotions.
That scene reminds me of Shadow and Bone. I haven't watched it.
Oh, Shadow and Bone. That's a book, right?
It's also
Oh. No, I only asked because I put that on my Netflix queue. Have you guys been I don't know. I think they're bugging the house. It's like they know way too much ahead of time. Yes. So anyway, the wolf that we feed, the emotions that we let ourselves feel or give into, okay, that's feeding the wolf. So if we feed our good emotions, we tend to be more happy, kind, loving. If we feed our negative emotions, we tend to be more angry, nervous, scared, and so forth. Yeah, we all feed both. That's true. We all feed both. It's not like we starve one to feed the other, because sometimes you just can't help but get angry. Right? I'm starting to get really annoyed having to wear these all the time, especially since I got both my shots. That's all right. They've got a lot to say. I should put you guys up here. Anyway, so you guys got that down pat. You even knew I was talking about wolves. Holy smokes. Wow. Are you psychic? No. Do you have any questions? Any answers? I always say that to my kids in school. Well, thank you. I'm glad. I haven't been able to do a children's moment in a long time, and you know, it occurred to me when I was working on this that you have sat very patiently. Anyway, so happy future birthdays, and you can take Mom back, and we will move on. I'm a December baby too, December 2nd. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I have a reading today. These are the words of Lama Surya Das. He's a Tibetan Buddhist. And he says, it can sometimes feel that the most frightening thing in the world is to honestly face ourselves. How do we deal with difficult emotions like fear and rage when they arise, like a tsunami or a volcano? It is good to start by examining ourselves first in a somewhat less stressful situation, starting first with the little ways in which the difficult emotions arise, like during meditation. When we are alone in daily practice, or maybe in a yoga studio or meditation retreat, where everything's perfectly arranged for our protection, comfort, and security, it's hard to get too overwhelmed by our negative feelings. But still, there are little irritations like mosquitoes buzzing around the ears or traffic sounds from outside. Perhaps somebody inadvertently steps on your toe in the lunch line, or the person sitting next to you keeps coughing and shifting around. Or maybe the instructor says the wrong thing for our hypersensitive ears. How do we deal with that when anger, aversion, and judgment flare up? Do we just keep a stiff upper lip and suppress it, making this stony false security or false serenity for calmness, detachment, and equanimity when it actually goes against our nature to be that way? Speaking of mild irritations, some people, oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was The Office. Some people can seem very cool, calm, and collected, yet they may be seething inside. And some of us may be those very people. I think all of us are those very people, depending on the day and the circumstances. Maybe our fangs and claws are not out, visibly pointed towards others, as in the case of some short-tempered individuals. But those jagged weapons may be pointed inwards toward ourselves, as in the case of low self-esteem or self-loathing, which can lead to depression. Denial is one of the largest rivers running through our heartland. We would do well to consider the little surges of anger that we keep inside of us, along with the occasional larger outbursts, and pretend, or not pretend, that they're not there, if we want to be in a better position to deal with them. The seeds of turmoil are in all of us, and there's no shame in admitting that. Let's now share a moment of silence where we listen to the wisdom of our hearts and minds.
Take a look around you. Tell me what you see. People here to worship our God, just like you and me. Some have come in gladness, some have come with fear.
we returned to in-person services this Easter, which was deliberate as it marks the beginning of a season of rebirth. We've talked about our congregation weathering a pandemic, and we celebrated our 170th anniversary as a church. And these are causes for recognition and celebration. But Mark and I were comparing notes, as we often do, both church planning, but we also work in education when we're not here. And we realized that we both were putting in a lot of extra time in both places during the quarantine and the pandemic and all that came with it. And we were sharing with one another how draining the pandemic has been in our personal and professional lives. Of course, I'm not telling you anything new, because you've all been going through it too. Isn't it wonderful that society gets to have this shared experience? And it's caused a level of stress that we've never experienced before, and hopefully will never experience again. So before we wind down our church year next Sunday, I wanted to offer some suggestions for how we might deal with our frustrations, our anger, our resentments, not just as a result of a once-in-a-century pandemic, but for life in general. Negative emotions, anger, fear, sadness, and others, are as much a part of our psychological makeup as positive feelings. And yet we are taught from an early age that negative emotions are bad, something to be avoided. Wrath, for example, was one of the 7 deadly sins of medieval times. And these feelings can take a major toll on our physical and mental health. But the fact remains that there are times when we do feel these types of emotions. And thinking back over the past year or so, we remember the panic buying of things like toilet paper or disinfecting wipes. Or getting halfway from your car to the shop only to realize that you forgot to bring your mask. The annoyance of one-way traffic patterns in stores, made worse by people refusing to follow them. The fear of contracting COVID-19, the stress of perhaps being laid off, or of having to help your kids or grandkids learn over a computer all of a sudden. The worry over the health of loved ones that you couldn't even go and visit. And the ever-present, not quite normal, of going out in public, even when things started to turn a corner. And then, of course, there are the larger societal issues: economic depression, heightened racial tensions, a political circus on steroids, a healthcare system almost completely overwhelmed, and on and on and on. How do we handle it when we find ourselves in these situations? Because difficult emotions, as I said, were with us before the pandemic, and they'll be with us afterward. The pandemic just has perhaps made them more pronounced. There are many ways to deal with these feelings, many different philosophies and teachings and perspectives, but for our purposes today, I'd like to focus on the work of Norman Fischer. He's a Zen Buddhist priest and the founder of the Everyday Zen Foundation in California. Fischer is known for adapting Buddhist teachings to Western society. He and his associates practice a technique called Lejong, which literally translates as mind training, and is used to transform negative emotions into positive ones like sympathy, love, and compassion. Part of Lejong involves learning 59 aphorisms, or brief, witty truths or opinions. They are specifically designed to make you stop in your tracks and really think things over. Practitioners basically train their minds to incorporate these sayings into their everyday thoughts as reminders to work with their emotions. Not just when meditating or when feeling spiritual, but all the time, especially when dealing with problems. So here are 5 of these sayings that will hopefully help you the next time you find yourself feeling negative emotions towards someone, even if that someone is you. When you first hear these, you might be thinking, how is that supposed to help me when I'm anxious, stressful, or resentful? Bear with me. Number 1, don't figure others out. As a psychologist, I have made a career of trying to figure other people out. If we're upset with someone, it would seem helpful to have an idea of what makes them tick if we're going to try and resolve a conflict with them or for them. But consider this. If you spend any amount of time reflecting on your own inner thoughts, you realize that you are full of contradictions, unacknowledged issues, and unfinished business. And we don't always think about it, but this is true for everyone else too. Even the people we know best in this world, our partners, our best friends, our children, the picture we have of them in our minds is at most a detailed sketch. It is nowhere near who they fully are. So imagine what it's like when we're upset with people who we don't know that well. The truth is that we have little to no idea what's really going on inside a person's head at any given moment. This is especially true when we're irritated with them. And yet our tendency is to think that we have the other person all figured out, that they richly deserve our anger or negative feelings, and that there's no way that we could possibly give them the benefit of the doubt. But the person we are mad at is not the whole person, nowhere near it. Who we think they are is in some ways a figment of our imaginations, because we're filling in a lot of gaps, we're making a lot of assumptions. I can recall a discussion I was having with my wife several years back. Now, if you see me out in public or at work, you know I try to keep things light. But I do have a tendency to be grumpy after a long day at work, or when I feel overwhelmed with all the things that need to be done, and there always seems to need be a list of things that need to be done. And Dawn and I were talking, and at one point I just kind of said, I gave out a sigh, and I said, or I asked her, why have you put up with me for all these years? And she said, you know, you are more than your grumpiness. Anyone that you're bothered by, whether it's someone you know or a stranger or an acquaintance, is more, much more, than just your reason for being upset with them. Number 2. Extra slide that didn't get deleted. Work with your biggest problems. Oops. Oh, figure out. I'm sorry. See, what you see is a screen ahead of what I see, or behind what I see. Work with your biggest problems first, like getting your PowerPoint working. Let's face it, dealing with problems is not exactly fun. We would avoid it if we could. And the bigger the problem, the more we tend to put it off. This can then turn into trying to avoid the problem altogether. Negative feelings are unpleasant. They don't feel good. And it's very human to direct them at people and things that have very little to do with their cause. We may blame, lash out, act impulsively, or just quietly stew in the privacy of our own minds. Think of it this way, though. When a doctor treats a critically injured patient, he or she doesn't start with the minor symptoms. For example, it doesn't make much sense to fix a broken arm before treating major internal injuries. Dealing with the biggest problems first, as far as our anger or fear or depression is concerned, means turning toward those feelings rather than avoiding them or letting them control us. Noticing how they make us feel, taking those deep breaths, calming down, stepping back, and seeing things as they actually are. If we try to go there first, instead of leaping to conclusions, blaming or avoiding, we will be able to act more wisely. Number 3, this is my favorite. Abandon hope. Wouldn't that be a great picture on the church website? Okay, the minister abandoned hope. Not going to that church. In Dante's Inferno, above the gates of the abyss, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. It doesn't seem like very useful advice, does it? Aren't we encouraged to be hopeful? When we're in conflict with someone, don't we want to be hopeful that it will work out? Yes, we're arguing today, but don't we want to believe that tomorrow will be better? And maybe it will be better. But hope, in these cases, can be an obstacle. Why? Because it can distract us. Instead of dealing with right now, hope causes us to look to the future when hopefully things will be better. But hope can cause us to sometimes become impatient. We want the bad feelings gone, to put them behind us. Or because negative emotions are seen as bad things, we may feel that it's something that nice people like us shouldn't be feeling. We may hope that working on those feelings will somehow cause the other person to have a change of heart. It does sometimes happen that when we soften our stance, the other person does as well. But we shouldn't necessarily expect that that will happen or hope for it to happen. It's kind of the subtle distinction between being hopeful and wishful thinking. As I talked about earlier, people's lives are bigger than their interactions with us. It is therefore very likely that the cause of their bad feelings goes much deeper and are much more extensive than their dealings with us. The truth is that anger, anxiety, or resentment can be very hard to overcome. There's that old saying, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Working through those feelings takes work, and it can take a lot longer than we want to admit. Even when we think we may have put those feelings behind us, something will come up that proves us wrong, reminds us that we still have work to do. What we need to do, advises Fisher, is to abandon hope and instead replace it with patience. We need to keep working with our anger, letting go of any notions of quickly getting over it, or any expectations that others will just come around and be nicer if we do our part. And if we stick with it, our efforts are likely to pay off. But paradoxically, only when we stop hoping that they will. Another good one, right? Don't poison yourself. That seems obvious, right? But in the case of negative feelings, it refers to a sort of self-centeredness. Of course, we each have to be responsible for ourselves and to not expect others to take care of us. But having a me-first mentality can lead to, at the extremes, paranoia, greed, and selfishness. At the same time, a little self-concern is not all bad. It's sort of required. We have to look out for ourselves to some extent. What we should strive for, Fisher argues, is a wise concern for others that will balance our own self-concern. What does a balanced relationship between yourself and others look like? Those of you who have children or are caretakers of older relatives may often be in the position of placing their needs ahead of your own. But if you don't have a healthy degree of self-concern, if you're not able to take care of you, how can you possibly take good care of them? Self-concern is only toxic when it is an end in itself and not for the sake of others. When we're upset, it's easy to become self-absorbed. But think about how different our experiences would be if we remembered not to poison ourselves and instead turned our attention to others, especially people we're upset with. How do things look like from their point of view? And lastly, don't be so predictable. This is sort of the flip side to not trying to figure others out. When you think about it, who do we know better than ourselves? We have plenty of evidence after a lifetime's worth of experience that we are this way or that. We have all these beliefs about who we are. We are an angry person. We are a caring person. We're a cheerful person. We're a depressed person. We're an extrovert. We're an introvert. We're a liberal. We're a conservative. We wear our hearts on our sleeves. We keep our feelings bottled up, etc., etc. We are products of our genetics, our culture, our upbringing, and our habits. We can't magically put that aside in our dealings with other people. But at the same time, none of us are robots. None of us has like a programming that's put into our heads that makes us act the same way 100% of the time. Just because we have tended to react one way in the past does not mean that we have to respond that way in the future. We run into all sorts of different situations in life. We also have free will. Part of the reason that you may be sitting out there today, or on any given Sunday, is to cultivate your spirituality, to grow and to change. And yet we may find ourselves trying to prove the opposite notion. We tend to be who we are, and we resist being open to change. Even when we claim that we want to change, we tend to revert to our old ways because they're familiar, because they're comfortable. As someone in the mental health field, I cannot tell you the number of people I've encountered over the years who have sincerely told me, and they are sincere when they say this, that they really want to change. But unfortunately, they don't want to do anything or change anything about their lives or themselves in order to do it. It's sort of like someone who bakes pumpkin pies all the time saying, you know what, I want to bake an apple pie. But you keep using the same ingredients for the pumpkin pie. Not being predictable means paying attention to ourselves. In the case of negative feelings, for example, do we tend to clam up and refuse to talk? Do we raise our voices and carry on, ranting and raving? What if we could step back and look at our actions and realize that they're not really helping us? Are these old habits that need to be put to rest? Just because it's the way we've handled our feelings the last 99 times does not doom us to acting that way the 100th time. And if we are aware of our feelings, our responses, our habits, we can choose another way of dealing with our negative emotions. So, as you go about your business this week, you can tell your friends that you went to church and that the minister suggested that you not figure people out, to handle the big stuff before the small stuff, to abandon hope, to not poison yourselves, and to stop being so darn predictable. Let me know how they respond if you have such conversations. On a more serious note, our negative emotions present us with an opportunity. They present us, sometimes forcefully, with the possibility that we can do things differently, We don't think about it this way, but these feelings can be a helpful reminder of both who we are and who we might become. Anger, anxiety, depression, and so on can be downright awful. And they can feel raw and painful. But if we can be aware of this and can train ourselves to be patient with our pain and to work with it, we can actually be healed by the very feelings we've been taught are bad. May it be so. Our closing song is The Fire of Commitment.
From the line of days remembered, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment, and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment, and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment, and our future can begin.
I close our service with these words of Deepak Chopra. Every time you are tempted to react in the same old way, ask yourself if you want to be a prisoner of the past or a pioneer of the future. And as I extinguish the chalice, I invite you to join me in the words. The flame is extinguished, but not our hopes for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world. Please join us in our benediction.